Hi everyone. Where we left off last time, we have game objects, and I introduced an important concept called inheritance, where you can make a new kind of object that takes the basic functionality of an existing object, like GameObj, and then lets you make a new class that has all of this basic functionality, but also lets you add its own extra functions, like getName. We're going to be using this, at least initially, for power-ups. So the whole idea of a temporary game object is it should have a fixed lifespan, where you're only allowed to run draw, say, 100 times, and each time you run it, it counts down. And when it gets to 0, it kills the object so you can remove it from the game. So it's like a temporary object. Before we actually start making that functionality, I want you to double check in your GameObj. Make sure that you actually have an alive Boolean variable, because all game objects should know whether or not they're alive or dead. And alive here just means working in the game. Dead means should be removed from the game. You don't need to give isAlive as an input in the constructor, because all game objects start out alive. So it's not like we need to ask what's the x-coordinate and then assign it the x-coordinate. Instead, it's just always equal to true. And then double check that you have a getter and a setter for your alive. So the getter just returns isAlive, the setter takes an input, and will set the alive variable to whatever the input is. Okay, so if that's all there, let's take a look at an important feature related to inheritance. Let's start by giving my object a variable that's going to be time left. So this is how much time is left before we kill it. This is like the lifetime of our object. So we do want to add this as a new constructor input. So it'll be an integer, I'll call it t, and then here I'll say time left equals t. As a quick note, if you're going to run your GameObj constructor, super has to be the first line inside this constructor. I couldn't do this. That's not allowed. That's just one of those rules of Java. Okay, so now when I make my temporary game object, I'm giving it a lifespan. So now I'm thinking, when do I want to count down the life? When do I want to say you've used up one of your life units, one of your time units? I think I want to do it inside update. So every single time we run update from inside main, every time we run this line, the power-up time will count down. So let's make an update method. Public void update. Here's the thing though. Before, when I said powerup.update, it was running the game object version of update. But now it's like I've got two versions of update. I've got the one that I inherit from game object, but then I just wrote my own right here that's empty. So let's see which one actually runs. I'm going to print line, this is the temp version. And let's fix the compile time error that's happening here in main. So the problem here is my temp game object is expecting another input, because remember we added that. This is the time left, so it's going to have 100 steps left. Okay, let's run it and see what it says. So notice that it says this is the temp version. That's what's displaying. So when I run the game, it is no longer running the inherited version. It's running this version. So that's bad though, because when I update my temp game object, I want it to do whatever a game object would have done. I want it to move around and stuff. I just want to add an extra thing that happens in update. So here's what you can do. This is the new feature. You can say super.update. And what this does is this runs the game object version of update. Why can't I tab? That's weird. So what happens when I ask the powerup to run update, I can control and click, and it goes here. So the first step of a temporary game object updating is I tell it, let's run the GameObj version of update. So it's going to run the version where it moves around. But then right afterwards, I want to say time left minus minus. So it's like I'm going to do the ordinary game update, then I'm going to subtract from the time, and then I'm going to say if I'm out of time, if time left is less than 0, I want to say this dot set alive to be false. And all the time you should be wondering, where is set alive defined? Whenever you run a method, think, whose method is this? This is one of the ones that we inherited from GameObj. It's this one, set alive. So, put it all together, I'm saying my special version of update will run the regular GameObj version of update, then I'll subtract one from the time, and if I'm out of time, I will kill myself. And that's the idea. Let's go ahead and add our own special version of... Well, no, let's not do this. Let's go to GameObj, and inside draw, right now we're drawing all the time. Let's do this. If is alive equals true, then I will draw. So I just put the drawing command inside an if statement. So in other words, once I'm dead, I won't draw anymore, I'll disappear. An important note is your object is still there, it's just not displaying itself. And that's using memory, so it's going to make your game lag a lot unless you actually remove it from the game, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. I just want to do something quick and easy so that you can watch the power-up disappear after a certain amount of time. So let's run it. So there's my GameObj, and there it disappeared. And that was exactly 100 steps. So if I want it to last a little bit longer, let's make it shorter. So if I want it to only survive a short amount of time, I can set it to 50 steps. Can run it again. Oh, and there it disappeared after only 50 steps. Come back for the last video where we'll make a special method in main whose job it is to spawn new power-ups. So every certain number of loops will randomly create a new power-up.